Welcome to Keep What You Earn, your judgment and jargon free zone for entrepreneurs of all levels. Get ready to learn how to scale your business, save money in taxes, and create a business that grows your wealth. If it feels like the financial side of business is like eating your vegetables, well, then think of this podcast as the ranch dressing to make the process a little more enjoyable. My name is Shannon Weinstein. I'm a CPA and business owner on a mission to simplify money and empower others through knowledge. I hope this episode inspires you to take action, but remember that the information we share is for educational purposes only and is not individual tax advice. Now that we got that out of the way, let's start the show. So, yesterday, I introduced a bit of the ideas that I've had lately around how to value a business. And I mentioned a couple of risks to mitigate in your business as you grow and as you want to build value. I wanted to expand on those today a little bit because I realized that there's a lot that we can do in every one of these areas, and that one episode wasn't enough time. So, there are three areas of risk that I think are the biggest for business owners. And I think that in particular, I would say, well, service and product alike, but I do see this more prominent in the service business, mostly because the service businesses tend to have an offer that correlates to the talent or skill of the founder. Typically, we are talking about somebody who is serving in the role as the main fulfillment channel in addition to being the business owner. So, when we talk about the business risks, I think it's super clear that I'm going to be talking about the over reliance on the owner as a big part of that. That is the first risk. Because if you cannot take, say, 2, even 3 weeks off without something burning to the ground, then you have this risk, period. Like, you cannot step away without something happening. Now, I'm pretty sure almost every business owner has this risk, but to some extent. And can it be mitigated? Absolutely. But here's how you would do it. You have to look at where you're spending your time. And you also have to look at what areas you should be doing. It doesn't mean that you should be doing nothing and you should delegate 100% of your role. Now, can you and become an owner and not an operator? Sure, absolutely you can. But if you do, if you are building, if you are still building and you want to be involved and you want to be active in operating the business, then what you should do is really give yourself a hard look at your calendar and your time and just really reaffirm to yourself that only you can do the things that you're doing. Like, can somebody else do it relatively well? Or could you defer anything out that you're currently doing? Like, are you prioritizing effectively and are you assigning the right person to do those things? Because over reliance on you to do everything end to end can just be dangerous, not only for your health and your own well-being and your own business, but because you're simply missing the opportunity to train other people or to teach or to bring people up to speed. And what you're going to have happen is you're going to grow the gap between where your team is and where you are, and they'll never catch up because you'll always be 10 steps ahead and they'll always be chasing to figure out how they can help you. So, when it comes to over reliance, this is one of the biggest risks I think any business faces. And also, by the way, in what I've seen in terms of transactions. So, if you're looking to buy or sell a business, if you're looking to, you know, take on partners, buy out a partner, all of this, when it comes to the value of a business, when you have over reliance on the owner, it drops the value drastically. Not to mention, if you plan on selling your business and you're like, I want to get my paycheck and I want to go live on an island and just like chill and be happy and not get a phone call. Well, guess what? You're probably going to get those phone calls for a decent period of time. You may even have an earnout where the buyer of your business decides to keep you on as an employee for a period of time while they're getting up to speed with everything and you need to transition. So basically, now you're being paid as an employee to do the things that you could have done before, but also this can reduce the purchase price of what you got because now that earnout is going to be part of their budget to buy the business, so they're gonna be paying you overtime in order to pay you over the course of time, I should say, to have you help them in that transition. Also, It's super awkward, I feel, to I haven't experienced this myself, but I can imagine it's super awkward to be working as an employee in your own business that you built. So in a weird way, it's like, I don't know, being the third wheel on a date with your ex-girlfriend or boyfriend, you know, that's super weird. But you get what I'm saying. It's super odd to feel like you're, still working in the company that you built, but you're no longer in control. You can't make decisions. And that you've handed over the reins completely. That's got to be difficult. I don't think I want to put you in that position, right? So we have to be thinking about how can we get ourselves out of the business as quickly as possible so that transition becomes seamless. The second risk that I think is really impactful is when you have an over concentration in particular clients. And I mentioned this yesterday. And when it comes to, concentrating clients, what I mean is that you have a couple of these big clients that represent a huge chunk of your revenue. We ideally want to have it so that no single client represents more than 10% of your revenue, ideally. Now, different business models can shift that, but it's a great way to make sure that you're mitigating the risk of losing more than 10% of your revenue if a client quits. If you have more than that concentrated in a client, then you have a huge risk if that client is to leave. Now, if you're thinking, Shannon, I have one of those clients, they're never going to leave me. Well, guess what? They could. Things can happen. They could close the business. They could decide that they've had enough and they have like a quarter or midlife crisis and they decide they want to burn it all down and go do something else. They may decide they want to take the business in a different direction. Things change. And it's not just the business, the people's lives change, people evolve, and you have to basically budget for the unexpected. That sounds like such a weird term to say, but you have to be nimble. You have to be able to adapt to that. And you can't go down with that ship. You can't be over relying on that client in order to generate your income. You have to have a rock solid pipeline of clients ready to work with you. You never stop selling. You always want to have that sales pipeline to call on because if you don't, and then one of these clients leaves, you're going to have to hustle your butt off because you got a little comfortable with that recurring revenue, right? Have you been there? I've been there. And then if a client leaves or something happens with them, you're stuck going, "Oh, shoot, I need to go catch up and I need to go out and, tell people what I do again. And I need to sell and I need to be, in business development." And there's very few things worse, you know, barring any like actual negative things like running out of money, obviously. But there, one thing that really sucks in business is when you have to do business development out of necessity because that scarcity mindset creeps in and it's just not enjoyable. It's not fun. And it really kind of clouds your thinking.
Hey, Shannon here, and I have a quick favor to ask. If you're enjoying this podcast and enjoying this episode, please leave us a review on your podcast platform, whether that's Apple, Spotify, Amazon, any of them, and let us know if you're enjoying the show. One of your biggest takeaways, we would really, really appreciate it. Okay, back to the show.
All right. So the last risk area that I think affects pretty much everybody is some type of industry risk or market risk. And, this is talking about the external risks. This is talking about the market, if you will, political, economic environments, all of that stuff. So, for example, I have a client that's in the oil and gas industry. And one of the things that significantly impacts their business is whether or not, you know, a Republican or a Democrat is in office. For example, we're currently in this election cycle right now. As I'm recording this, but it's before the election day, which when you listen to this, hopefully we will know who the president is. But we were talking about how, depending on how the election goes, it could significantly impact their business. So they're not exactly taking a ton of risks right now. They're not exactly, doubling down on any type of strategy because they want to see how this goes. And you have to be conscious of that. So I would challenge you to ask yourself, what economic external factors, whether it be the weather. I mean, look at Jason, my husband. He had a waterproofing business and he religiously would look at the weather reports to see when it was going to rain. And he would know that he would be busy, right? So even though it may not be that literal, where are the areas where you can see those seasonality peaks and valleys? Where can you notice how external factors affect you? Where can you pick up on patterns? And here's the thing, what are the likelihoods that something could go wrong? And better yet, how can you set yourself up with the right life jackets under the seats? Look at an airplane. They have installed the oxygen masks overhead. They have installed the flotation devices underneath the seats. They have installed certain things into the actual aircraft to make sure that everyone goes safely. The slides, for example, out of the windows. All of that is done with the intent of never having to use it, but knowing that there is a risk of things happening that are out of the pilot's control or that can happen due to weather, etc. So, in your business, how are you building those little things into your aircraft to make sure that if this thing were to happen in our economic, socio-political environment, if something were to happen, are you ready? And what would that actually entail from you? Because what if there was something external, something about your industry, your market that could trigger a 50% decline in sales? You know, what is your contingency plan? What and how long will that probably last you? And how many months of negative cash flow, for example? How many months of declining profit of how much before you signal the red alert that we need to make cuts or that we need to freeze things? You should probably have something in place as like a warning system, right? To give you the alert that, hey, something could be wrong. Because, I mean, I don't want to use like the stages of cancer, but when you think about like the progression of a disease, you know, you want to catch things at stage one and you want to know the telltale signs if you're stage one, two, three, four, and you want to know where you're at in terms of that risk. So I would encourage you, even if you are doing your damn best, and even if you are doing an excellent job at mitigating risk inside of your company, I'm going to ask you to take one step outside of it and really ask yourself, what are the factors that can influence your company's performance that you have zero control over? And the only thing you can control is your reaction to it. And then I'm going to turn around and say, great. What are the ways that you can mitigate that reaction? So I'm going to give you an example that I actually follow. So when you think about my business, right? I'm a fractional CFO, and you're probably thinking, okay, Shannon, like you're not really affected by a lot of the political stuff or the weather or anything like that. Like, how are you affected? Well, number one, yeah, tax laws affect me a little bit, but in terms of my business doing well or not doing well, the biggest thing that actually influences my business in that regard? Cybersecurity. Because we, as accounting firms, anyone who's an accounting firm, we have access to taxpayer data. We have their tax returns, we have their bank accounts, we have logins, we have all this stuff. So, the biggest external factor that could take me down is a hacking of some sort, identity theft, maybe a way somebody infiltrates our systems. So, what have I invested in? I've invested in a really elaborate security plan. I'm investing in fractional security officers, and I'm making sure that we have the utmost protection of password managers, that we change passwords every time an employee changes, that we safeguard client information. We don't email things. So, if you've been a client of mine and you know that I am pretty draconian about you not emailing me documents, this is why, because all it takes is somebody infiltrating my email, somebody opening a link or an attachment, and then getting into things and finding your social security number. But they can't if you don't email it. So, cybersecurity is a huge risk to us. And I consider that one of the biggest market risks that we have now, or industry risks. So we can do what we can to mitigate that, but there's really nothing I can do to completely prevent a hacker. I mean, just like you can't prevent yourself from getting robbed by the right person, even if you put up all the cameras, all the fencing, all the locks, all the things, somebody might find their way in. It could happen, but you have to be ready when it does, is my point. So if you're looking at the over reliance on yourself as the owner, the over reliance on a client, or even external risks, market and industry risks, give yourself a moment to really think about which of these is the strongest in your business, which is the strongest influence, And what could you be doing, whether it be daily, weekly, monthly, yearly? What could you be doing this coming year or period that would help you progress toward a less risky situation within your control? And those little micro steps really do add up. So I would challenge you, pick one of these things and start chipping away at it. If you have an over concentration in certain clients, start building your pipeline. You know, if you are over reliant on yourself as the owner, start your SOPs. It's that simple. Start delegating. It's one little piece at a time.
We realize that CFO services may not necessarily be accessible to everybody. And that's why we have packaged our CFO services into a power session for you. With this single purchase session, you'll be able to navigate the financial scorecard with me personally on your business and figure out what constraint you need to unlock next. We're going to give you direction, clarity, and we're going to find ways to increase your profitability, increase your cash flow, and make sure you never run out of money. Okay, if you're interested in booking a power session with me, I only do a couple per month, so make sure you jump on quickly and sign up. Check the link in the show notes for more information. I can't wait to see you in a power session. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating and review on your podcast platform. This small action goes a long way for podcasters to get our message heard by more business owners just like you. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to information about our guests and ways to get in touch with me. We'll see you on the next episode.